Hey everybody, Rob Satrom, Feedbackwrench. I'm here with my dad, Merlin Satrom, 900-year veteran of Ziegler. Ziegler, the cat dealer. We've just been talking about value. We got done with that. Now we're going to talk about, why don't you recap real quick these 7 levers, or what did you call them? They're the 7
Well, we call them the
sensitivity?
7 sensitivity factors of equipment ownership. And really it's how much of your bottom line as an equipment owner, typically an excavating contractor, but it could be all kinds of uses of equipment. When you buy a piece of equipment, the sensitivity that they have, in other words, a 1% change of this item, like productivity or whatever, what does that do on your bottom line? So the number one way to make more money with a piece of machinery is to be more productive. That's number one. Number two is to be up and running, availability, uptime. Number three is to have lower your operating costs. Number four is utilization, how to get more things done with one machine. So those are really the big 4, and then kind of down from there are 3 more that add up to the 7, and they're more finance related, more dollar related, and they are resale value, interest rates, and sell price. So,
And we're talking about this because the whole thing, and whether you're a small business owner, maybe you're watching this and you've bumped into this, maybe you're a heavy machinery salesperson, right? Our goal here is for people to get a better, we just want to share what we've learned about value.
Value.
I think
versus
I've done
price
versus
cost.
because price and cost is kind of easy. And I do small business entrepreneurship, which is really funny. You worked for the same employee for 35 years.
Yep,
Is that what it was?
years.
So you're a salesman,
35 and a half years.
and then a salesman and sales manager. And, oftentimes I find it cool that we are both calling on small businesses. So you grew up calling on government entities and small businesses primarily, right? And then I am working with entrepreneurs, and it's been really cool to have so much commonality and arrive at the same spot. I do technology, you did machinery, and helped folks make more money. But we're trying to share. How many interactions or how many machines have you done the math to think through how many machines you sold or were included in or through your salespeople? I'll share mine while you maybe think about that. I think I did the math, and I've probably sold 4,000 to 5,000 laptops or computers when I was at Best Buy. I know that when I was at Nuance Financial, so that was like a 2.5-year thing, and I bet I ran 400 meetings total, and I think we had like 150 small businesses that we worked with. I don't know how many stinking phone calls I've been at Feedbackwrench because I've had 2 more kids, and the business is a little intense. I'm not always aware of what's going on. No, just kidding. Things go fast for me, so I haven't recapped how many, but it's been, I think we're approaching 100 some odd websites that we've done. And when we pile on the different advertising campaigns that we've set up and stuff, it's been really cool. How many tractors do you think, or interactions do you think you were in?
You really had to do about 3 a week in order to make a living that made sense. But they go from $30,000 used machines to some of our bigger machines are $1 million. So
what's the biggest sale you ever had?
Oh, well, it was a package. It was a package of road building equipment. Probably a $4 or $5 million package.
Okay.
And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And it was a total partnership. I really can't claim it was me. It was a total partnership between Ziegler, the resources, and the customer. Mm-hmm. We just got some amazing customers that are some of the best business people and some of the brightest spots in all of the economy of Minnesota. They're really fun to work with. Mm-hmm. It's who's building your freeways. It's who's building your buildings and keeping your water clean. It's the people doing the work that all the talking heads are speaking about. Yep. There's people who actually do that work, build the pipelines, build the sewers, drill the wells. These are those people, and they're absolutely the best.
And and I just want to hit on this a little bit so that people understand so those are the big ones. What's just a good nugget sale that would kind of your bread and butter? If you're trying to get, 3 a week going, what does just a good solid sale look like? What would a typical solution look like here and we're in the South Metro, Minneapolis, Scott County, or the Twin Cities? What would that look like?
Well, when I first started, there wasn't very many machines Caterpillar made. We made a small line of bulldozers and a few other machines. Most of everything that we ended up selling towards the end were products that weren't even available. And the broader Caterpillar's product line got to the small end the more customers that were involved. And at the end, we were selling UTVs and skid steers and Massey Ferguson garden tractors. So everyone could buy one. If you can buy a car, you could buy what we sold. So it got to be where first we were selling bulldozers and loaders and excavators that hardly anybody ever owned, a few contractors, to something everybody could own. So at the end, a compact track loader, skid steer type of machine, a $60,000-$70,000 sale. We had salesmen that would do 4 or 5 of those a week. And I'm sure, the Bobcat dealers and the case dealers and those guys, this is what they do every day. They probably do 3 a day.
Yeah.
Those guys are amazing. That's what they do. That's what they've always done. And
That's
so we realized
the camera's on you. You're just being that. No, I'm just kidding.
But what we realized, what Caterpillar realized, in order to grow, you have to get into more things. And that's a concept. If you're not constantly seeking growth, you're going to go backwards. And so whether it was Ziegler or Caterpillar or anybody, you need to be thinking about what's my next step. Because the world's moving. I used to say the world's moving 5 miles an hour. If you're not going 10, you're going backwards. So you can't be an entrepreneur and just, I'm going to do this and that's all I'm going to do. You need to have a growth plan, and you need to have a realistic approach to how am I going to continue to get better, not necessarily bigger, but to grow so that you don't go backwards. It might be revenue, it might be gross profit, it might be number of customers, it might be different products. You have to have that mindset, or it's just what I saw in 35 years. People who refuse to grow went out of business.
Yep. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk on this episode is we were talking about those 7 levers, or 7 sensitivity factors. And these are 7 things that are value points for heavy machinery, but I think it's applicable pretty much everywhere. It's truly
works for anything,
whether it's a product or a service. I think there's a translation there, but this idea of, okay, we want to help people be good salespeople. How do you be a good guide to help uncover those things, to help shine light, and maybe do a little teaching back and forth with your prospect, knowing that they have these things, that probably these are important to them, but they usually start out and it might not be important to them right away. I keep bringing this up for folks. When you have a website, you always need to make sure that you balance this idea of, you don't want to be too fancy. And all that is if you give this look that you're expensive, people are super cynical when they first start out. It's within the context of a relationship and trust. Once the trust has been built a little bit, and I think that giving authoritative content on your website, creating podcasts, doing videos, and helping people solve problems. You mentioned that the better salespeople would ultimately be like the best employee of a contractor. You're going to go in, find out all the problems they have, and assign them, hopefully propose a solution that'll make them more money. So they're trying to be as valuable as possible. And yet, if something's not valuable to somebody, like as you're talking about that, there's a process that has to happen. You have to kind of earn the right, and there's this back and forth, I think, that needs to happen. What thoughts come up as we push into that? We don't want to be too pushy, and yet it's probably there. But what thoughts?
The back and forth, assuming marketing or some way you've discovered that there's a need, some end user, customer, whatever, has a need, and they've engaged you or you've engaged them. So now it's a matter of listening. It's a matter of asking enough questions so you can find out really what their challenge is, and then bringing the best solution to it. Typically, we think of salespeople. If you hear somebody yak, oh, he'd be a good person. No, he'd be a terrible salesperson. He doesn't shut up. The person who listens and is a little contemplative about life and about situations, they're the people you want to have be on your side. That you want them to be fun and engaging and pleasant to be around and not a hot mess.
You want to like them. You want to be likable.
You have to be likable. Yes.
You don't want to depend on being likable. If you just slink around and try and be the most likable guy in the room, I think you're going to sell price, and you're going to be, I don't know. There's something.
We've all heard the adage, God gave us one mouth and 2 ears, and that's the proportion in which you should use them.
And yet there's a 1-2 punch too, I think. Don't you think that there's I think there's a combination of asking great questions, listening to them. And then I always think there's this quick presentation of, well, here's some problems that, I mean, do you have this problem? Do you have this problem? Here's a solution we usually see. Do you like the idea of that? Why or why not? And it's usually like, so it's a question, them talk, a little quick 1-2 punch of a little presentation with lots of listening.
When people buy things online, look at all the information they're looking for. So yeah, you want to give them the information that they need, not just the information you think is cool, but the information they need to hear.
And digitally, you get search. People ask a question. Yep. That's why I think just a quick ad, a little punch while we do paid search advertising. Why in the world would you search how to amend my tax return in Minnesota? Well, doggone it. Some business owner did it wrong, right? How to amend an 1120S. Somebody did it wrong. That's why they did it. So what's cool about search is you can kind of identify. That's why search with retargeting and good solutions on your website with good content keeps going. But so great listening, little presentation.
Well, if you're a salesman with those kind of references historically through your experience, that you can avoid all these paths with brambles on them, thorns, and you can bring them down this path. That's a gift to the customer. Mm-hmm. But you can't do that without trust. You first they have to trust you.
So what are some things that help build trust? Like a lot of these folks are having, they're doing, maybe a lead comes through on the internet, right? Or you go proactively call on somebody, right? Yeah. Let's just go look at our YouTube channel on our website. We got all sorts of ideas to percolate and get in front of people. But talk to me about, how does the first little layers of trust happen from your perspective?
Well, I think the first one is character. And you need to just ask yourself, is my motivation to do this something I tell my grandma about? Do I have character?
Are you worthy of trust?
Yeah, exactly. Character is really who you are when nobody's watching. And if you're proud of that, then go sell yourself, and that'll be good. It's really, like you said, you got to be likable. You can't go in there and build or tear down trust immediately because you're rude or you're not you need to be respectful of them. In all the ways, it's, dress at least one notch higher than they dress. Mm-hmm. Don't come in there with a suit and tie on if that's inappropriate, but don't come with, looking like a bum either. Mm-hmm. You want to treat that, you want to have your equipment and your car and truck and yourself and your clothes look like somebody they'd want to put their money in. And so you have to do that. But then really it's do what you say you're going to do, and do it. You mentioned, I can't remember if it was the last one or this one, but delight. One of our mission statements where I worked was to satisfy customers with innovative solutions. It always bothered me a little bit because it's like, well, a lot of people can satisfy you. Mm-hmm. How about delight you? Mm-hmm. How about give you more than you paid for?
Yep.
How about we as salespeople doing more than we get paid for? And that, I think, is I've heard you talk with your customers that you've interviewed. You guys have talked about doing one for free.
Yeah.
We used to do demonstrations. Let a guy have a machine that's worth $1,500 to $2,000 a day for nothing, to make money with, but so that we could prove that it was worth it. Mm-hmm. And we did a lot of that. So you got to do what you say you're going to do, and then keep the customer informed. We talked about that before, but customers don't want surprises. They want to know when my paint is going to be applied, when my roof is coming. They want to know when I can expect,
simple little things, like just
exactly.
Let them know, hey,
they've got schedules they want to keep. They got kids they want to have babysat. They got to be there to answer the door. These are all challenges and big issues if you don't keep abreast. Now, there's a lot of things you can't control. Weather being one. Some of the products, availability and prices. But do your best.
Yep.
And don't make it an excuse, make it a reality.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to have excuses, but given the price of lumber, this is what's going to happen. There's an ad, one of the radio podcast or the podcasts I like to listen to. There's a contractor that says lumber prices have skyrocketed, but here's our guarantee. When they go down, we will make that right with you.
That's
cool. In other words, they'll lower their proposal.
I listened to Patrick Lencioni. Patrick Lencioni at the Global Leadership Summit, a thing that you and I have. Yep. We've gone to all sorts of them. And in his book, Naked, which was about vulnerability, there's just this whole idea of like, don't fake it till you make it.
Right.
But he mentioned in there as a consultant that one of the things that he embraced and he encourages other people to do is go in and just add value.
Yeah.
Don't be so concerned about like, oh, I'm giving away free time and free advice. Like when you said that a salesman from Ziegler, their goal is to ultimately be the best employee or a great employee of that contractor by finding their problems and bringing a solution, right? In a way, it's almost like an acquisition specialist, right? That's going to solve problems. What I've found, and I've, it's been 2 businesses, and I've done it every time, both businesses, almost every conversation I have. Be open-handed with the way that you just solve problems for people.
I like that.
You don't always happen. You don't need to force, it's going to be an hourly rate. You will get fed. It will happen, particularly if you work hard at creating a value-based, margin-based, relational-based solution in some way, shape, or form that you can live on. And there's a lot that goes into that as a small business. Yeah. That's probably the biggest challenge I have right now is what amount of XYZ service at XYZ frequency at what particular price ought we to provide, right? That's not an easy thing to understand, but I think that every business owner right now, or anybody who's in sales, trying to do B2B sales in particular, if you are just generous with the amount of information you give away on your website, in a conversation, just add value to folks. I think that really turns the tide and helps you win trust, because ultimately you're showing that it's not about you, right? And now our values that I've concocted, and I did this at Nuance, and I've just carried them. They're now mine. They're not theirs. To be trustworthy, competent, enjoyable, and rigorous. And in trustworthiness was this relentless pursuit of my client's best interest. And when I think of what that relentlessness, that's a weird word, what that actually means to me is that, you know what? I'm not worried about it. If when we're done, you're better, that's my goal, right? Yeah. And I think that as I do that, then I build more credibility. We're sitting at 71. We're about to have probably 78 5-star reviews. Wow. We've built tons of websites, and it's because we're just helping people. So I think that one way that you can earn trust is that if you ever get an opportunity to actually engage with someone, doggone it, be helpful. Yep. Don't make it about you and trying to close that sale. Make it about you and understanding what their problems are. I like really broad questions. So what are you working on big right now? So what's like the big rock that you're pushing uphill?
Yeah, those are great questions. It focuses on them. I always appreciated that the owners of Ziegler always, kind of pushed down to us and believed and lived it out that if it's in our customers' best interests, it will eventually be in Ziegler's best interest.
Amen. Absolutely.
And so we didn't ever have to worry. And because of that philosophy, it also pushed the decision-making down to the lowest level where it could be dealt with. Because we all knew that satisfying a customer, if we lived up to our mission statement, we were okay. And so rather than all the vice presidents making all the decisions, I almost always asked my salesman, well, what do you want to do? And because that's how I learned it.
Yeah.
And if they didn't have a solution, they need to go back and go do some more homework.
So part of this is getting down to, are you worthy of trust, right?
That's right.
This integrity,
That's right.
integrity, and are you worthy of trust? And I think spending time concocting your mission, your purpose, your values, and then your strategic intent, right? Maybe we hit on that real quick. Your values are what you want to exude. It's what you want to see in your life. It's what you want to see in the lives of your employees and the outcomes in their lives as they serve customers, right? Yeah. Or as they operate. I think there's always 2 sides to values. How do you do that to your customer? And then how do you operate internally? 2 or 3, don't do 20, don't do 9.
That's right. That's a good point you bring up, Rob. I mean, really, as a small business, you ought to write down what your values are. And then you probably ask your customers, hey, what do you think my top 3 values are? They'll tell you. And if you say it's family and they never ever see you taking care of your family, it's not family. And so your values, you can say them, but you better live them out.
Mine is street cred.
That's right. Well, integrity was one at Ziegler. And I tell you what, we were always better off. You never lie to a customer. You don't have to tell them everything, but you don't lie to them.
Yep.
And then you just think about that. When you don't lie to customers, you're never having to keep a list of the lies you told. You're never having to worry about that shadow coming over you and darkening your doorstep. you don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
And so being upfront and truthful with customers, and they don't really want to hear how the sausage is made. So, all the stupid details, but keep them informed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just learned the hard way that they're better off knowing the reality. We had a third-party trucker break down, and we didn't get a machine there on time, and there was a crew standing there, and we take a lot of heat for it. But you know what? That trucker worked for us, and I can blame it on that trucker all I want. We didn't get that machine delivered. And so I had to be straight, you got to be straight up with customers.
Ownership. That's right. I think ownership of the problems. So there's a weird balance there. One is you do want to inform reality. Like, well, there's a third party trucker, but ultimately it's me. And you know what? I had a customer, I got to think about the details, but it was basically like, you know what? Oh, I know what it was. I landed a good, bigger client, and we were so used to working with all these smaller organizations. They were a little bit bigger, and they had multiple employees, and I set a vague process. So they were like, wait a minute, can you do, I don't know if you're a good solution because you didn't have our launch pad, our launch plan and our this and that.
Oh, sure.
Well, what are we going to do? And all of a sudden we had to regroup and kind of come forward and be like, you know what? I really screwed the pooch here. We didn't establish our good system. In fact, it's because we're always working with these little guys where we're just hustling hard and we don't have a formal communication of where you are in the process. I'm sorry about that. So we regrouped. We tried to put together some tools so that we could communicate that. And they were about to, I was about to have to write a big check. I've never had to do a refund. I was about to do a big refund. I wasn't really excited about it. And, but by taking ownership of that problem, I think they're great customers. They're actually doing more with us this next week. And we're going to be able to help them a ton. But taking ownership of a problem is so important, and realizing that the buck stops with you, right? And you mentioned the earlier podcast that when a customer comes to you with a problem, it's actually great because they're not just, if they just dip out on you, like cancel the credit card, redo the credit card, whatever that is, and they're just trying to avoid you and that's terrible. But when they come to you, what did you mention? They want your solution from you. Make it right.
They want to continue. They want to continue to do business with you.
Yeah, and that's huge.
When it goes well, they like that.
So I think ownership of the entire situation helps you build trust. I think that asking backing way up. So this is kind of deep into the trust situation. Right? This is all mindset stuff, and hopefully, just listening to this, folks, helps you. This is just from experience. We know that if you don't do these things, you don't take ownership of a situation or ownership. There's also what I call kind of that first, I think this is like a Bill Hybels thing, this first class service ownership. Like the whole idea of you owe it to your prospect to follow up with them. You owe it to them to send them the prompt reminder. You owe it to them to give them the reminder the day before, the week before, the month before. It's not on them, and you do them a disservice. I always tell folks, when whatever it is, gently follow up with them. Even if you've had people, I have a lot of people in my pipeline that I'm always just gently touching on, saying, hey, gentle reminder, we like your business. I know you haven't chosen us yet, but if you haven't chosen yet, we want to do this. Cause I get a lot of people that are kind of like, I want to do this, but we'll see if we do it. So I think that that's valuable when you're working with this ownership of, it's not up to them. Like send them the calendar invite, make life easy for them, for crying out loud.
You hit on it. Make life easy for them. Their lives are filled up with all the stresses of, you go through certain stresses running this kind of a business. Boy, if you're a landscaper or a welder, if you've got a small business where you've got physical things that can go wrong and ruin houses and ruin equipment and hurt people, there's a lot of stresses on you. So I've heard you say it in some of your other podcasts. Make their life easy for them. And I think that we had one big customer that was a huge landscape provider, and he did business with us because he said Ziegler makes the yuck go away. And he had competitive brands, and everything was a hassle, and we made the yuck go away.
If you're listening to this and you're one of these accountants, so I do a ton of work with accountants just because I built an accounting firm, and I think they did a really good job. But the whole idea, I always tell people that the three core things that a business owner wants is, one, every red-blooded American wants to keep more of their money. even if they got a little,
Yep.
even if they're a little bit of a commie.
Yeah.
I don't know any, but
Well, I think I've heard you say that the left doesn't voluntarily pay more taxes.
ain't nobody like, you know what, round up. I'll just
Yeah.
pay. You know what? Here's a check. I don't need it. I entrust the government so much. None of them.
Yeah.
So they all want to save in taxes. They all want just make my life easy.
Right.
So the fact that you're saying that, my second value prop is I say it, there's different layers to that onion. Be a staff alternative, because then you get into the mathematical game of, well, what are you going to do if you don't go with me? You're eventually going to, I know where this goes. You're going to hire Patty part-timer, and you're going to pay her $22 an hour, and you're going to have her 3 days a week. So
Patty part-time.
and but this idea of if you just make it easy, right? And then the third thing is, I'm going to do it well. We're going to keep you compliant. So saving taxes, make their life easy, save them time, but just do it all for them. I get the monkey off their back, for crying out loud. We always talk about when you're a leader or a manager, there's monkeys, there's problems, this thing on your back that you're dealing with. And good managers and leaders know how to empower other employees to handle those.
Yep.
But if you walk up to a business owner that's got that accountant monkey on their back, the tax monkey on their back, they're also trying to make sales calls, they're also trying to get their Windows laptop, they should have bought a Mac, to work. Like, there's a lot. If you can go up and go, hey, $1,000 this month, I'll take that off, and you don't ever have to worry about. Make the yuck go away.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I like that. Take the monkey off the back. One of the managerial books I read was
it Blanchard thing?
Yeah,
Ken
it's
Blanchard?
like, you don't want any monkeys to come into your office. And in fact, when that person leaves, you want to send some monkeys with them.
Yep.
But you mentioned competence. And I think that's a key in those 7 factors that isn't in there. Each one of those areas has competence. How good at you are doing what you're doing. And competence is a subset of risk.
Mm-hmm.
And the phrase I always used to say to my guys and to our customers is, with my product, you'll get the most work done at the lowest overall risk, at the lowest overall cost. Most work done, least risk, lowest cost. And risk is huge. You cannot have people without competence doing your taxes, keeping your books, doing your insurance. So you need to partner with a good lawyer, a good insurance company, a good banker, a good accountant, a good engineer. And you got to make sure that those people, and a good equipment house, or, SEO or whatever it would be.
Whatever I do.
Yeah.
Websites and ads. Websites
Right.
and ads.
You want competent
SEO.
people doing that.
Yep.
Which is one of the 2 best ways to keep you on your toes is don't ever let down somebody who gave you as a referral.
Yep.
I mean, if you get a referral from somebody, top of the list, get that deal put together the best way as possible. And if it's a brand, I mean, we sold Caterpillar, but I don't care if you're, if somebody comes to you because you're the Toro dealer or the Red Wing shoe dealer or the Anderson Windows dealer, they came to you because of that brand. Do not let that brand down.
Yep.
And you got a lot at risk there. So that keeps you competent, but you got to have competence.
One of the tensions that comes up is people always ask me, what did you say when they asked you if you're a CPA? Because I am not an accountant, and I owned an accounting firm. I don't know how to do it. I had Nick, and Nick was amazing because he's a CPA that was at CBiz, and I always knew that there wasn't a tax return he couldn't stare down. And yet a lot of accountants and bookkeepers out there, they're asking, do I need to go get my CPA? Do I need to get an enrolled agent? And oftentimes we're encouraging people that you don't need to. I do think there's value to it, but ultimately it's, do you know how to do it? And there's this weird balance. It's the same thing about college education, right? College education's a joke unless you can't go through a system that does hard work on somebody else's timeline and get grading and produce results, right? There's value to college for sure. And yet, does a college degree really mean much anymore? Not really. Why? Because all of those things have been reduced. So again, I think the actual ability to get things done, and this is what Google and Facebook are talking about, that they're hiring people that don't care if you went to a big school. They want to know, can you do things? Are you competent? Now, the difficulty is, how do you prove that, right?
Well, if you can bring some results that you've achieved somewhere else, or if you can bring somebody who will say, I've achieved results with
go
them,
work in another firm,
another customer that says they did it for me here.
How many small businesses? So one of the things that I recommend is, in order to do that, I think that you should at least go get a little certification. You can go to I am cynical of large, expensive higher education right now. I think is a ripoff, unless you go into the sciences or a mechanical degree of some sort, or like, that's it. Liberal arts degrees are a joke.
They've certainly set up a lot of things that make them look like they're not the value they should be.
Yeah.
And now when it's going to all be free,
and there's inflation,
valuable
they're
is it?
inflated dollars.
Yeah. How
So
valuable is it?
So what I'm getting at is it's the ability to do something, not the certification, your what do you call it? Your degrees and your MDs and it's not your titles.
Mhm.
It's not like, do you have those titles? It's, can you do the thing? But I do recommend go to a small technical school. Go get some accounting certifications, some courses. If you Google Feedbackwrench, how to prepare taxes professionally, I have a blog post in there that shows you, here's all the little trainings that the other little businesses provide. So Jackson Hewitt, H&R Block, and even everything that I do in my business, I went to LinkedIn Learning, and I sat down and I learned as much as I could. And I did like 5 or 10 things for free for people until I got to that point, so that I knew that I could do it. And then I could point back and say, well, this is what I did. Does that look like it's worth it or not?
Yeah.
But in accounting and taxes, I'm just hitting on this real quick. If this isn't relevant to you, apologize. But they oftentimes think they have to have the CPA. They have to have an enrolled agent. There is value to that. If you can go through that, absolutely do it. But the pendulum isn't towards that. Most accountants are running around. They're really bad accountants. It's usually that they're good accountants, but they're really bad at just proactively engaging and solving problems. Like I think that there's a lot of great accountants that are bad entrepreneurs. There's a lot of great accountants that they're in a tax firm just being a monkey, hitting numbers on so many tax returns, and they're never shown how to like go in and just, well, wait a minute, what are you seeing here? How do you add value? Pause it for a second. So when I say I don't think you need your CPA or your enrolled agent, I think there's value to it. I would rather, my guy's a CPA. I prefer a CPA, but I don't think you necessarily need it. You don't need the credential. You need the ability, but sometimes getting that credential is good. So I think there's a tension there to manage. So this whole idea of you got to establish trust with folks. If you establish trust, you're gonna have a better time. You're gonna have better sales, right? And when you have trust like that and you're establishing trust, the number one thing that we're saying is you have to be worthy of trust. Like number one, be worthy of trust, integrity, character, pursue the best interest of other people, give away free value, work on their behalf, right? I think that there's some simple things in the immediate as you're getting going is to find little common ground pieces, right? Yeah. John Maxwell was probably the most influential person when it comes to leadership and ability in both of our lives. I remember that you had been listening to all sorts of stuff, and then you gave me a CD that I listened to on the way back from Wisconsin one day, and it was like the 5 keys to relationships. And he did a thing in there that it's like when you meet somebody, connect with somebody, right? And in order to connect with them, you want to ask questions about them. So when you first meet people, you start with really low tension questions, like, "Oh, cool. So are you from around here? Or where are you from?" Right? And then so it's really low risk questions, right? But there's this dynamic of you have to know them by asking questions and be known. You have to share a little bit of who you are in order to have some relationship there. So it's, so you got to be ready to share. You can't be, well, now's when I ask questions about you, right? Sometimes I'll be around people and salespeople calling me and I'm like, not one connection. The goal is connection, right? And if you can move the ball down the field professionally as well as connect with people personally, there's value to that. But you need to make sure that they know you're not wasting their time, because you don't want to do small talk. And yet, you know what builds relationship is a little bit of common ground. So where are you from? How long have you been doing this? And then I think if you're in business to business sales, asking a question like, all right, so tell me, what kind of business are you in? And how did you get to this point? I like asking big old broad questions, but ultimately I want to hear the story. And maybe they'll get down to, I don't know, we sell tractor, or we dig basements and I'm sick of my case, right? Maybe it's that, or maybe they'll tell you their life story, or maybe there's somewhere in between where they kind of summarize it because they're aware.
Almost every entrepreneur, I think, in the businesses you're talking about, has a great story of how they got started, because they probably noticed how much money their former boss was making, and they were going, wait a minute, I'm doing all the work. So they probably, almost every excavating contractor is that way.
Yep.
And how awesome is that? It's capitalism 101.
Mm-hmm.
It's and how great is it to be that contractor that trained all these great little contractors?
Yep.
When you get up to the northern part of the cities, there's a gentleman up there that has been in excavating for 30 or 40 years. Everybody up there worked for him at one point, and that's where they learned, because he was the premier excavating contractor in the North Twin Cities.
And get them to tell that story. That's what's funny is they
love telling that story. That's why it's low hanging fruit, because everybody loves telling that story. How they just, how many times have you told the story about moving from the accounting firm to this?
Yep. It should be part of your and you need to be ready again to present quickly yours and not make you the highlight. People, it smells so quickly when it's about you.
Oh, yeah,
it's such a difficult balance. So I will admit that as much as I'm saying you got to have this 1-2 balance, you need to get self-aware. And the more you do this, it takes practice. You just got to go out and do it. You got to swing the bat.
Because it becomes genuine then when you're not forcing. And that's where it goes back to what I said about character. If your motivation for this is to get your quota so that you can get your weekly paycheck, probably in the wrong business.
Yeah.
It needs to be something deeper than that. You need to be changing people's lives.
Yep.
We said satisfied customers, but we wanted to have customers that were successful, because successful customers will come back and buy equipment from us again.
Yep.
But we needed partners. As an equipment dealership, you're in business. Ziegler's in business for 107 years now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that way by alienating people. You
Yep.
get that way by partnering with people and having long-term relationships.
And alienating means manipulating them for your own purposes rather than solving
And not that we hadn't done that over the years.
Yeah.
But boy, I mean, I know full well after being there for a third of that existence.
And you're old.
That Ziegler, we helped put people in business.
Yeah.
We, somebody can purchase a $300,000 machine and now compete with the guys that have been in it. And that was a tension, sometimes.
But hearing these stories, so what you're sharing is you've got this, there's value to hearing that entrepreneur story. So what line of business are you? Help me understand. How long you been doing this and how did you get here?
Yeah.
How long you been doing? So what's weird is when I ask a question, and this is like question asking 504. I don't even know if there's a class. This is super level. This is talking thousands of computer interactions. I like to hit them with 2 or 3 questions at once, because ultimately I want them to bring it where it needs to be.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So people feel manipulated and trapped. And this is probably the thing that an introverted and even an accountant that thinks more binary, or somebody, if you're just not hardwired to like have an authentic curiosity about something, like I walk up to somebody, I'm like, how many kids they got? Where do they go to school? Where did he go to school? What kind of business? He's got a business. Oh, I wonder how he did. I genuinely, like, it's just in me. I walk around Lifetime Fitness, I bump into people and instantly, like, give me 4, and you're the same way. Like, and now we have a natural curiosity. When I see somebody, I always think it's like a door. I want to test to see if the doorknob is open or available to open.
That's right.
And then I'm going to open it if it's there. And I'm going to be like, all right, maybe I'll walk in, maybe not. You got to sense people and stuff. But I guess what I'm getting back to is, if you want common ground for a business owner, you just start with simple questions. So you've been living here for a long time. Are you from Lakeville? You don't sound like you're from Minnesota. Make fun of your accent for crying out loud. Do a little self-deprecate. Do some Columbo. That's bumble around. Columbo, I only know because John Maxwell said it. Bumble around, do some Columbo. But then you can get into, all right, so help me out. What's your business kind of focused on? And how did you get to this point? Like, how'd you get started in this business? And sit down, and you doggone better be taking notes for the love of Pete. Now, if you're walking through Lifetime Fitness, this is within the context of some sort of sale conversation. This is if you've got somebody on the line, somebody on the phone, somebody in a meeting. We know where this relationship is going, right? We know where this is going towards. I want to help you. I want your business, right? I want to solve your problem. And they appreciate that. Like every good red-blooded American entrepreneur is like, or business owner, solve my problems. So this idea, if you can, what was I saying?
You're talking about taking notes, and
take notes
for the 18 years I was a salesman. You saw my daytimer, my notebook. When I'm done with a call, I would sit down and I would make notes. And we didn't have a system to record that. Now we have a system where you can enter that, so you don't have to keep your notes. But my office, I remember when I gave my territory and its details to the next salesman. After he had one load, he said, "I only have a Suburban. I really don't have room for any."
Because you're a daytimer. I mean, your whole life though, we always laugh when people talk about distracted driving. Like Merlin he had taken his van and my dad had adapted his van so he could like take notes, have his phone on his ear. Back in the 90s, they're talking, and you had every single phone, but take notes, because especially if you're person to person, and you're not taking notes, go away.
Yeah.
Like, just go away. Like, I have no patience for it. The fact that if I have somebody call on me and they're sitting there and they're not taking notes, I instantly dismiss them, because I know nothing will be remembered.
I mean, we've all had the waiters at the restaurants that don't have to write anything down. They get our order perfect.
One guy, Travis.
Those are amazing people. But I'm the same way. If you're not making a note, and so as a salesman, we always asked if we could mind if I take some notes. Most customers were pretty excited about that. Yeah. Or they go, why'd you write that down? And I go, because it's really important to me how you move dirt, because this helps me.
And let's be frank, if you're doing serious business, there's so many levels that it produces. There's a practical side of it. If you're doing serious business, you're not going to remember it all. Oh. You have 4 a week. Yeah. Is that, we're doing enough. There's no way if I don't go back to that. And then if you have a team, real quick, if you don't know a system to do this, HubSpot has a free CRM, doggone free. When you want the emailer and their automation, it's like $1,500 a month, which is a little rich, but it's worth it. That is a perfect business that you want to talk about efficiency and productivity. Anyways, take notes so that you can actually come back to the information. Take notes because it communicates. If you're in person, you're showing I value what you're saying.
Well, that's right. I mean, and we'll get it probably in the future, but you need to have a sales process. Mm-hmm. And taking notes, especially on the early side, learn people's names. Man. If you don't know their name, how are you going to know how to take care of them? Yep. And so there's a sales process that you should have. You should have a sales process, and you should know where you are in that sales process. And it better be on the same step as your customer is. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're trying to demo to him and you haven't even figured out that he doesn't need a bulldozer, he needs a wheel loader. Yep. Well, you're a fool. Yep. And so that's just a graphic example of the way a lot of things could be. So anyway,
my kids just busted in the door here. We're shooting a podcast, girls, so we're recording right now. Why don't you come in and say hi, and then why don't you leave?
These are my beautiful grandchildren.
Yeah, so I got all sorts of kids. That's my 4.5-year-old. This is my 9-year-old.
That's the reason why I retired.
Yeah. This is too sweet. So
why don't you let us finish up here, and then I'll come on.
Yeah. So when we're talking about value, folks, the whole idea, you're making these connections, you're hearing their story. Oh, here's my sweet girl. Be gone with you. Don't slam the door and be quiet. The idea is understanding their story, taking notes while you're doing it, having a sales process. All of these things are going to help you. They're going to communicate things to that person that cause them to trust you, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's so valuable. And as you have that common ground, you're building a relationship. And ultimately, you don't want to make sales. Now, if you're selling products, it's a little bit different, right? You're not selling a product. You are selling a solution to a problem. Mm-hmm. I sell a service that's a solution to a problem. If you're just selling widgets to an extent, if it's just food, it's still relational. So I don't want to discount products at all.
Well, you want to have served them so well that they want to come back. Mm-hmm. There isn't a company out there that is going to survive if they don't have repeat customers. I mean, they got to have new customers. They got to have new customers, but repeat customers too.
And my point is, you will kind of become their friend. Mm-hmm. Like, there's at least a common respect there. Yeah. That will be there.
I got invited to. I've been to funerals. I've been to weddings, graduations, confirmations, retirement parties. I still get invited to be part of my customers' organizations, fundraising. I mean, great relationships with customers. It's been a lot of fun. So you're right. And it can be hard.
Yep.
You become friends. Our best salesmen's phones are always ringing because the customers trusted them. and they knew that's where they would get the fastest answer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the salesman's challenge was we knew how the system worked, and it's to, be careful to not mess up the system by inserting it at the wrong spot and still getting the job done for the customer. The reason the customer called the salesman is because the salesman was the most responsive person in the company.
That's cool. And that's why they're paid the most usually too. So this whole idea is this started with that there's these 7 sensitivities in your world. I think that I think that there's 3 big value props. I just try and simplify it big time, but there's certainly more. The more sophisticated the business, the more there are. But until you understand, going to the process here, until you understand what's valuable to that person or that organization, you have no business selling something.
Right. Right.
I think that the hardest thing that would happen, and I still balance this, right? It's hard for me. People call and it's like, oh, I usually like to connect, do an analysis, have a proposal, and then they choose, right? Mm-hmm. That's usually what I like to do. And you guys had your system too. But sometimes in that first phone call, it's like, let's just cover the whole thing.
A lot of times they're together, the steps are joined together in one process.
And it could be difficult for me because I might do 5 in a row where that was adequate. And then you hit the one that I should have slowed down. I should have sensed that. And if I would have asked better questions, if I would have slowed down a little bit, but usually, you follow up with them again and it starts to get realized. So I think the most valuable thing that Nick Meester, my old partner, if he were to say one of the things that he learned was he got to sit through hundreds of meetings with me. And the tension I always had to him, I said, don't quote price till I ask you to quote price. Don't come with your solution until you've uncovered as much as you possibly can. Now, you don't want to frustrate and annoy a person, right? You don't want to deliberately hold things back. And sometimes if I can sense that tension is rising, like how much does it cost? I'll throw it out there right away. Now, just so you know, when you're working with us, we do websites. We kind of have small, medium, large packages. And even here, it's $750 to $1,500 for small. Most of our customers in this $2,500 to $6,500 range. And then bigger organizations that just have more writing needs and more complexity do $6,500 to $15,000. And that means you're getting more meetings with more people, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll just hit that right away. As you do this, you'll start to feel that tension right away. Just get it over with. Give them a range, right? Yeah. It does save you time too, right?
That's interesting. We used to deliver proposals that have specifications and conditions, and at the end, on the third page is the price. Almost every warm-blooded person flips back to that back page and derails you immediately. So that's a good way to diffuse it. Just go, it's $400,000.
The other thing, if you have like the second or third meeting, I learned this. There's an old, shrewd, so old, he's probably your age. This shrewd insurance guy, I got this coaching at Thrivent Finance. I really got great coaching from there. I really enjoyed Elena Beckius, and I can't remember what this guy's name was, but it was like he was like the wizard. He'd been selling insurance since the freaking 60s. Like he had been doing this forever. Classic Thrivent Financial Lutheran. Like his ancestors came off the same boat with mine from Norway. And what he was talking about, he had a couple different things. First of all, he used to he said what he would teach this idea that you want the customer to bring it to wherever they're comfortable. The second you make them feel manipulated. So he would ask a question. Well, first of all, what he'd do is he'd say, now, before we dive in here in the second, third, or fourth meetings or any meeting, you know what, before I got some stuff I know I want to cover here, just right off the bat, is there anything top of mind that that we got to hit on in this meeting? Because in the same way, when I would sense price, like, what's your proposal? Get it over with. How much does it cost? I just wanted to diffuse that quickly. He would always make sure that he'd grab his note of paper. And I do this to this day. Every single meeting I have now, I've shown my cards. Every single meeting, I just want to hear, so what's top of mind for you? Because there's some folks, whether they're existing customers or they're new customers, they just have that one thing. And they are not going to hear a darn thing until they ask that question. Yep. So you might as well clear the air as soon as you possibly can and get that over with. So I think one skill is to just, as we dive in here, I know where I want to bring this usually. We love helping XYZ. Is there anything that's top of mind for you so that you can get out of them what needs to be addressed, because they just won't hear you, right?
We had that happen a lot. And many, many times it wasn't about price. It was delivery date.
Really?
I got to get this road opened up, and we're going to start mining or stripping, and it's going to happen Thursday. Mm-hmm. If my machine isn't there Thursday, I'm going to plan B.
I got to go somewhere else.
It's not about price.
Yep.
There, So yeah, it's
And unless,
or it could be clearance height.
mm-hmm.
It's got to go under a bridge or in a shop door or whatever. How high is it? We sold motor graders to townships. Some of these old township sheds, they were built when the machines didn't have rollover protection devices on them. And so, boy, we actually had a low profile cab specifically that we would buy.
Interesting.
So height was a major concern.
Interesting.
Later on, it was steering wheels. Did it have a steering wheel or was it joystick controlled? So it's pretty interesting to find those out. It wasn't about price.
Nope.
It was about these other things.
And they're not going to hear you
So
until
that's
they
good.
know.
Good that you bring that up.
I thought he was a wizard. The other thing he taught me, and I just took it for myself, and maybe you like this, maybe you don't, but I hate the question. So do you have any questions? We'll go on a different rant a different day.
What questions do you have?
Tell me what questions you have, right? But what he would do is when he was done presenting, because there's this back and forth. Anytime you're talking, your equity's going down. Yep. You're withdrawing from the bank. Whenever you get them talking about something they love, which is themselves and how they work and what's important to them, you're filling the bank up, right? So what he would do is whenever he's done there, I always like to finish with a question so that it gets them back talking and starts going up as quick as possible. But when it was done with like the presentation, he would go, all right, so questions, thoughts, or no, he'd go, so what thoughts do you have? Thoughts, reactions? And it was like the most broad, like, do you have a question? Do you want to sign up? Do you want to, like, you basically are just like putting them on a flat ground where they can go 360 degrees in a direction. Yeah. And it just lets them, and what it does is it doesn't, because one of the worst things I think is like pushing for the sale. Yeah. What you want to see is where does that frog hop towards the water, away from the water? Did they take us? I just made that analogy. That's so dumb. You're not a frog. But do they move towards the light? You're a bug going towards the light or away from the light. Do they move towards your solution? Do they stay the same? Do they go sideways? And then you can react, because ultimately, right, you don't want to come up with that. So this is really when you've presented the solution. Hey, I think there's leadership to this. In the accounting world, I always tell folks, here's how I would do it. I sold with 2 sheets. The first sheet was the estimated tax savings we thought we could find for them. The second sheet was a list of everything that's included. And then at the very bottom, it'd be like, so here's the deal. We looked in your books. We saw what your situation is going to be in your conundrum. We want to solve for you. And for you guys, we'd like you to be at $900 a month, right? Whatever that was. And I would just look and we want you to be here. And I like that better than, we better have everything listed out in detail on our website about the pricing. Because guess what? Every client's a little different, right? Yeah. Now, this is a service, and sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. I think that there's value to know. But if you just put your price, so I guess my point there is
that was thoughtful that you did that. I mean, you must have had customers that responded well to that to continue doing it.
Hundreds of them,
and it brought a lower ease or a lower tension at the end of a meeting than a higher tension.
Because ultimately, the end solution here, again, when you're a guide, you're in the business of solving these types of problems. You want to find people that have these types of problems. Yeah. You want to enlighten them to the ways that you can have a mutually beneficial relationship at the end of this thing, where they love having their problems solved by you and you love solving their problem, and it works for you for the next 100 years, right? That business continuity thing. And good businesses understand that, right? Anyone who doesn't understand that, you want to get rid of them. So there is this thing that, like, I think that in the services industry and in the types of businesses I work with, crafting a solution at the appropriate level for whatever they look like may not be the easiest thing to solve when it comes to like, well, I'm going to take 10 hours of a designer's time and 14 hours of this. It's hard. But I think it's where the opportunity is. Yeah. The dark side of that is all you do is go peek in their books and find out how much money they have, and then you adjust your pricing based on that. That's not what you're doing, right? You're not going in there and find, oh, he's got a lot of money, better charge him way more. Usually people that have more money have problems that they appreciate more deeply being solved. I think there's a synergy there, a symbiotic relationship between that sometimes. So yeah, I think building trust, pursuing their best interest, building a relationship while you're doing it, keeping it headed in the right direction, asking some really great questions, presenting only when it's time. Don't go
there's a huge difference in how you approach sales, knowing this is the first of many, or this is one
Oh,
of many
yeah.
sales. It's a whole different ballgame than the person who comes to your door with the
Trick-or-treaters.
whatever it is he's selling today,
Yep.
and wants a one-time sale and then he's gone.
Yep. A
It-
long-term,
it-
beneficial,
yeah.
reciprocal, mutually beneficial solution is what most of us want, and
That's
most
right.
people want
That's
too.
right.
If I got a problem, I want it solved, and I want to know who to
Yep,
call. So,
that's right.
hey, any other thoughts that pop up for you, Dad? Things that are like, hey, we haven't hit.
Well, we covered a lot of things, and I'm trying to get out of the yellow iron world and get into the website building world. So versus a machine you can drive and shift and listen to,
Yep.
versus a system and a service. I'm trying to grasp that to make sure what I'm offering is parallel to that. So
Yeah, and I learned so much because we help contractors. If you're a contractor, we help. We have a handful of them. We'd love to do more of them. And ultimately, I think what's cool is in 2021, you can identify people with problems with a search engine. If someone makes, there's a whole set of searches. If someone makes that, doggone it, there's only one reason why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And then they hit your website. If I search, again, if I search how to repair or how to get a replacement part or whatever that is, and I land and you pay, you create a piece of content that satisfies that query, whatever that is, gives a solution to that problem. You might have to pay to get it up and make sure that it's first, or you work hard to rank it.
Yep.
Eventually what will happen is people will find that. YouTube videos are great. My business is built off of I solve problems on YouTube, and then they YouTube it and look for it and they come to me. So what's cool is that those questions can happen. And then the other beauty is that you can take anything good that's happened in a sales conversation. That's what really this business has translated so well, because I'm just taking thousands and thousands of hours of sales and I'm translating that and trying to bring it to video. Yeah. And that's what's so cool right now is you have these tools. So imagine they search something, they hit your website, you make an audience out of them, and now you can serve up 5 to 6 Facebook ads, YouTube bumper ads, and say, hey, if you got this problem, if you just had hail come through in Elko New Market, we do roofing and we're not slimy. We'll come out and we'll help you, right? I'm just laughing because we had hail last night. So I think all of this translates really well to digital. And but this is the underpinning. I think this is the unique thing that we're offering here at Feedbackwrench too, is the underpinning is not that other sales are not genuine. I think there's just an authenticity of we understand how this goes for our customers. So anyways, God bless. Like and subscribe. Check us out on the podcast. We got you go to feedbackwrench.com. We've got that on there. And good luck. We appreciate your time.